Hi friends, welcome to this latest episode of the Nationalist View, and we have with us a very special guest, Dr. Lauren Amos from Israel. Thank you, Dr. Lauren, for joining the show.
Namaste, thank you so much.
Dr. Lauren is associated with Bar-Ilan University. She is a lecturer there, and she is also a researcher in the Department of Political Science. She is also associated with Begin Sadat Center for Strategic Studies, and we are going to talk about a very interesting paper which he has published there. We'll be sharing a detailed bio of Dr. Lauren Amos, as well as the relevant links of the article or the research paper which he has published, and you can go and access it there. So she recently wrote a very interesting research paper titled Between Precision and Legitimacy, How the Kargil War Shaped India's Strategic Partnerships. So Dr. Lauren, you have argued that Kargil was much more than a military victory for India. So what, in your view, was its biggest strategic legacy for India?
So thank you again. It's very nice and pleasure to come back, as always, to your podcast. So I will say that Kargil's most important legacy was the model India developed for employing force under political constraint. India did not choose between military resolve and diplomatic legitimacy. It combined them. It used the substantial ground and air power to restore the status quo, but kept the objective limited and refrained from crossing the line of control. At the same time, it relied selectivity on external partners, Israeli technologic and American diplomacy pressure, without surrounding control over its own decision. So Kargil demonstrated how strategic autonomy does not require isolation. It means using partnership to expand your options while retaining the authority to decide when, where, and how force will be implemented. That combination of forced restraint and selective partnership become an important reference point for later Indian crisis management. So Kargil showed that strategic autonomy is not the absence of partners, it is the ability to use partnership without becoming dependent on them.
We recently witnessed Operation Sindoor also some time back, another conflict between India and Pakistan. And in that conflict, India called off the Pakistani bluff of nuclear deterrence. But if we go to the Kargil War, so how did Kargil actually demonstrate the limits as well as possibilities of nuclear deterrence between India and Pakistan?
So Kargil actually revealed both sides of nuclear deterrence. On the one hand, nuclear weapons may have reduced the willingness of India and Pakistan to escalate through a full-scale war. On the other hand, they did not prevent Pakistan from initiating a limited military operation. Pakistani planners appear to have assumed that the nuclear shadow would constrain India's response and generate international pressure before the status quo could be restored. This is a classic example for stability-instability paradox. Strategic stability at the nuclear level may create opportunities for risk-thinking below the nuclear threshold. India demonstrated that conventional force could still be employed, provided the political objectives, geopolitical boundaries, and escalation signals remained limited. But Kargil did not prove that escalation can always be controlled. It remained an exponentially dangerous crisis whose outcome depend on Indian restraint, Pakistani withdrawal, and American pressure.
Let's talk a little bit about India and Israel relationship, especially in context of Kargil War. So you have described in your paper that Israel's role during Kargil War. So it was basically a shift from a supplier to an operational partner. So what exactly changed?
So when I wrote my PhD, I found that Kargil really was the game changer. And it was amazing because back then the India-Israel relationship, at that time we are after the normalization, but the relationship was not, very tied and very publicly. So Kargil did not create India-Israel Defense Cooperation. Israel had assisted India on a limited basis during earlier wars, and full diplomacy relationship, as I mentioned before, already been established in 1992. What changed in 1999 in Kargil War was the operational quality of the relationship. Israel was no longer simply transferring equipment. It was helping India solve an urgent operational problem during ongoing conflict. The lighting, targeting pods had been ordered before the war, but their integration with the Mirage 2000 and laser-guided immunities had not been fully completed. Israeli experts worked with Indian teams to adapt the hardware and the software under the serve time pressure. This demonstrates speed, flexibility, and technological reliability. Kargil therefore considerable Israeli reputation within the India security establishment as a partner that could help close operational gaps when the needs was immediate rather than theoretical. And I must say that Israel was almost the only one in the world that helped India because the Americans put sanctions on India back then. And Israel was the only one that helped and really want to be there for India.
Recently, we witnessed what you call the precision strike capability about which you have talked. We saw the full manifestation of that during Operation Sindoor, when especially India fired BrahMos, and it kind of created havoc in Pakistan, destroying basically most of its command and control centers. But if we go back to Kargil War, so you have made a very interesting point. Do you think that was the juncture where, because of Israel's assistance, India's war doctrine moved towards precision strike capabilities?
So it was operationally significant, but it should not be exaggerated into the deceive factor in India victory. The main burden in the reputation, the positions was carried by Indian soldiers, supported by the Indian Air Force. Israel's distinctive contribution was to help collaborate the integration of the lighting targeting pod with the Mirage 2000 and the laser guided bombs. And according to Air Marshal Nambiar, the integration was completed in only 12 days. The system enabled Indian aircraft to identify the strike small 48 days. And it was used successfully against targets around Tiger Hill in June 1999. Its strategic importance exceeded the limited number of perception weapons employed. The technology allowed India to improve battlefield effectiveness while operating within the political restriction against crossing the line of control. The lighting pods have been contracted in 1997, and the document India we can see that describe Israeli technical help during their external wartime integration. So again, Israeli technology help India translate political restraint into operational precision.
You have also talked about and especially highlighted India's decision not to cross the line of control, which is border between India and Pakistan. It's known as line of control. So how did this restraint actually strengthen India's diplomatic position?
So India restraint created a clear political distinction between the two sides. Pakistan had altered the status quo by placing forces across the line of control, while India defined its objective as restoring that status quo rather and expanding the war. The decision imposed real operational cost. India forces had assault fortified position on high altitude without opening additional routes of attack through Pakistani controlled territory. Yet this limitation strengthened India's international credibility and made it easier for the United States and other actors to distinguish between the initiator of crisis and the state of responding to it. Restraint was therefore not passivity, it was deliberate, surrounded of military force and limited political pressure. India's battlefield conduct and diplomatic narrative reinforced one another. India did not use less force. It used force within boundaries that stretch its political case.
Of late, the India-US relationship has been undergoing, the a lot of topsy-turvy things are happening. But if we look at the Kargil War, do you think that it's changed the way Washington viewed India, particularly in relation to Pakistan? Because during the Cold War, so it was very clear India was seen more as a closer ally to Russia or USSR, whereas Pakistan was seen to be, I won't say an ally, but it was kind of more of a it had a lot of support from United States. Of course, that was also because of Afghanistan also, but traditionally, so this was the situation. But do you think that the Kargil War changed the way Washington viewed India, and in what way?
Oh, definitely. Even before, with the 1 year before the nuclear test, my main argument is that although it was very difficult for India, I thought it, and I still thinking it was the best thing that ever happened to India, because for the first time, U.S. Finally, took India and Pakistan as equal. And for the first time, because as you mentioned, Pakistan was the favorite until 1998, sorry. And I think what happened that following this nuclear test, Washington largely viewed India as a challenge to the non-proliferation regime and imposed sanctions. But again, it was a very good thing for India if in perspective, because the Clinton administration increasingly viewed India as the state of seeking to restore the status quo and Pakistan as the party that had violated it. So on July 1999, President Clinton pressed Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif to take a concrete step through withdrawing the forces that had crossed the line of control. India's decision not to expand the war made this American position easier to sustain. Kargil therefore weakened the traditional tendency to treat India and Pakistan as strategically equal. It allowed Washington to see India not only as a nuclear problem, but also as a potentially responsible power capable of combined military action and restraint. The official US-Pakistan statement called for a restoration of the line control, while the White House was clarified that the forces across it had to return the Pakistani side. And if we go further, we can see that in 2008 and 5 and 8, sorry, when India and the US sign of the nuclear weapon deal. So it's not, it's not from 2005. It's back then. In 1999, the seeds we can see for that was there.
You also, as we have discussed earlier, that Israel's role during Kargil changed from a supplier to an operational partner. But do you think that Kargil laid the foundation for taking it even further from even more, even leaving this, going beyond this operational partnership and rather becoming a strategic partner. So, do you see that what role Kargil War played in making India-Israel strategic partnership bloom the way we are seeing it today?
So I will qualify that Kargil did not create either partnership in the Israel security context. Predated the war. Full diplomacy relationship, as I mentioned, were established in 1992, and the India-US repression had already begun after the Cold War, and through the Singh-Talabot dialogue following the 1998 nuclear test, it is therefore more accurate to describe Kargil as an accelerator and proof of concept with Israel. It created the crisis-tested operational trust. With the United States, it demonstrated that India could act restrained status quo power during a dangerous nuclear crisis. So today, both partnerships are much broader and are driven by technology, defense, production, China and the Indo-Pacific and the economic interests. But Kargil supplied something that diplomatic declares cannot easily create. Evidence of how partners behave during a crisis. So Kargil did not build the partnership from scratch. It tested then under pressure and accelerated their development. So it was a test without saying it was a test.
Thank you, Dr. Amos, for sharing all these things, and we will actually be sharing the link of another research paper which she has published on August 19th. So both the links will be there, and you can follow her work there. And we hope to host you back again soon on our podcast. And thank you so much for taking time out from your busy schedule, and that too, especially on a weekend. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you so much, my dear friend.